If you're a man who wants to lead with strength at home, build unshakable habits, and live with purpose, this conversation is for you. Today, I'm sitting down with Michael Chernow, an entrepreneur, restaurateur, and the founder of Kreatures of Habit. But more than that, he's a man who has fought to become the best version of himself. His journey has not been easy. He faced addiction, hit rock bottom, and rebuilt from the ground up. Through discipline, daily rituals, and a deep commitment to his family, he transformed his life. And in this episode, he's here to share the lessons that could change you, your family, your business, all starting today. We're going to get real about fatherhood, marriage, and the habits that shape the men that we are. This isn't just another podcast. It is a roadmap for becoming the man, husband, and father you are meant to be. Let's get into the show. Brother, welcome to the show. It's an honor to be talking with you, and I'm thrilled to get to know more about your life.
Thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
Let's start with what does Michael Chernow care about? And we'll say now, in this season of life, what is alive for you? What are you giving attention to? What's grabbing your heart?
My family, 100%, period, done. That's it.
Yeah.
That is my absolute 100% number one priority. It's where I find the most joy in life. It's where I want to spend all my time. And I'm with my wife for 20 years. So we met each other when we were young. I was 24, she was 22. And we just finished having this pretty, marriage is, I feel blessed and lucky that I have just met my soulmate. I really have.
You know that right away?
100%. Yeah. I don't deny, there's not a doubt in my mind. And of course, that doesn't mean that everything is perfect, but I know I've met my soulmate. And my wife is just, she's the gravity that keeps my feet on the ground, man. She just is. And I know that that's a blessing. I just know it is, that I have found that person, right? I think we walk through life and more people than not wonder when that person is going to show up for them. So I know that it's really, I'm fortunate to have found that person so early on in my life. But we just went through this over the last few days, this bump, and we've had a few bumps over the course of our relationship, and I think it's healthy, and I think I think a lot of I can't speak for women, but I know for men, something bad happens in a relationship, and immediately you go to the worst case scenario. Oh shit, that's it. It's over, right? It's very easy to just boom, quickly dive into that it's over.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? And I believe that is human condition in some ways, but what I have kind of distilled down is the key to a successful, long-lasting, and in my case, till death relationship is I call it upfront, in-your-face communication at all cost, right? So if there's something bubbling, if you let it simmer, it is going to explode, and then you have to worry about worst-case scenario, in my opinion. You feel something bubble, doesn't matter what it is. You make a commitment to your partner, it doesn't matter what it is. We need to be able to feel the comfort to hurt each other's feelings, right? Feelings are fleeting, and they don't last forever. So if there's something that's going to potentially rescue or preserve a relationship, and you know that what you're about to say is going to hurt that person's feelings, but the outcome of that is going to be potentially rescuing or preserving a relationship, then you do it. And my wife and I have that. She is a beautiful woman, and she posted an image of herself on, and she's not really social media, nowhere near into social media like I am. It's part of my life and business. But she posted this image of herself a few weeks ago. After a modeling gig that she did, and I was looking at her social, and I was like, oh my God, that's my fucking wife, dude.
Yeah.
I was like hit with like, wow,
Yeah.
she is like, take my wife out of the picture. She's beautiful.
Yeah.
And not only is she beautiful, but I know her soul, right? And so I like just felt this like wave of just like love and like excitement around this fact that this is actually my wife, this woman that I just saw a picture of. And so I reposted her image and I wrote this really beautiful thing. And she, at dinner that she saw that, and then at dinner that night, after the kids had excused themselves, which is another thing that I highly recommend dads do after dinner. Like we all want to kind of like just like get up and like do the dishes and like do it. Like I sit with my wife for 20 or 30 minutes after dinner and we talk. Big one for us. And it wasn't always, but I kind of learned her love language, and that is like quality time. It doesn't matter how long it is. It's just she needs that quality time. She needs me to listen to her and be present. And I became kind of passionate about that because I know that that's what makes her happy. But we were talking, and she was like, I need to be honest with you. And I was like, please. And she was like, that post was too much for me. It was too much for me. It felt clingy. It felt needy. It felt fake. And she didn't say it she wasn't that curt about it, but that's the gist of what she was saying, you know? And it crushed me, dude. It crushed me. And she explained to me that like it felt like, to me, you were showing me off, and it felt like you were like giddy in love with me. And I was like, oh, because I was in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, I was giddy in love with her in that moment.
Yeah.
And I have just like a lot of childhood trauma around rejection and not being loved or feeling loved. So when she said that, immediately my judgment of what she said was, I don't love you as much as you love me. That was what my head said.
Right.
And my way of dealing with shit like that is to shut down. You know, and I'm aware of it now because I've done a shit ton of work on myself. Like I know the signs of like, Mike's about to go into neutral mode, you know, and neutral mode is not the mode to go into. Like now you have to just like, and then it's so hard to do, but you know, conflict resolution over the years of me kind of analyzing it is not weighing the situation on how I feel, but taking a moment, taking a beat, and putting myself in their shoes for a second. That is so hard to do.
Totally.
So goddamn hard.
Yeah.
But I did. And, you know, it was like a moment of like, okay, you know, it didn't pan out the way I'd hoped it to, honestly, because I was just like, I still couldn't like see, like I love this woman so much, you know. It's not like we're in a brand new relationship where I see her walk across the room naked and I'm like, oh, it's not that, you know. But it's definitely in that moment was like, man, like with this woman 20 years, like I still am attracted to her the way I was then. Like, oh my gosh, like how lucky am I, dude? But it was just this thing, right? So we totally got through it, and and it brought us closer together. You know, like the next night, she curled up to me and she was like, you know, she was telling me how she loved me, but I guess it goes to say that like my family is my absolute number one, like. Happiness and freedom and like joy is, I think, the goal of every human, and I find it most when I hang out with my family. And one caveat to that I think is important to say for dads, men and dads, is like what I think has been a key to sort of my success in the marriage stuff and the fatherhood stuff and the business stuff is I am actually my number one priority.
Right.
Before my wife, before my kids, before my business, before everything. I am. And people used to give me shit for saying that. But the truth is that when I make myself the number one, that doesn't mean I sacrifice time with my kids and my wife. That means I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning before they do, 2 hours before they get up, to spend that time focused on myself, uninterrupted, on no distractions, full self-indulgence, self-care time for me.
Yeah.
So that when they wake up, they're my priority, right? And I can be there presently because I know that I'm taken care of. Like there's nothing that can happen today that will make me feel like I've left myself out I've left myself out to dry.
Yep.
And so I think for most men don't do that, right? Most men don't take the time to invest in their health, you know, and their mental health. And so I think I've gotten so much better at it over the years, so much better at taking a beat. Like when she said that, like typically I think for a long time I would have immediately just given her a quick response, reaction on my first thought, I think that first thought stuff is like, it takes a lot of courage to not react, right? Like you got to just take your pride and first thought, not in my control, like I can't control that first thought.
Yeah.
So I know that was a long-winded way of,
Yeah, it's a peek into your world, and I appreciate it. There's several things I'll reflect back and that I find really valuable. One, I found myself making a commitment silently as you were sharing about sitting at the dinner table. I'm like, I'm going to sit at the dinner table longer tonight. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that will make an impact. So those little things, I think, how you live and you're authentically sharing like what happens at your home and what actually feels like it's making a difference in your marriage, and I'm sure that your kids are seeing that, probably overhearing some of those conversations, but they're watching mom and dad sit and connect. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did that more intentionally, if the kids would come back to the table, even after they ask to be excused. They come back and they're kind of drawn to that power center, which would be really cool. The second thing is I agree with you on taking care of yourself in such a huge way. After 18 years of being with my wife, 15 years of being a father, and nearly 500 interviews with epic fathers, right? Almost a decade of live events. What I can say is that across the board in my marriage, the number one linchpin, underpinning the keystone habit of all of it. And I feel like I know all the habits, right? I know I say this, you say this is how we're supposed to do it, weekly date night, well, all the things, is the determining factor of the success of our marriage is whether or not we have taken care of ourselves. That is it. And I said this morning, two things happened that are very relevant to the point that you brought up, which one is I said to Tatiana, I woke up at 6:15. The kids I see at 7. That's when they get up. It wasn't enough time for me. And I said, I just knew I was not totally grounded and centered because I didn't have the time I really wanted in the morning. And so I felt it when I met the kids. It just I wasn't solid. And then the second thing I did today was I have an app where I track Tatiana's period cycle. That's a ninja move that if people don't do that, they absolutely should do that. And I looked at it and it was 8 days away. And I sent her a message and I said, hey, knowing that your period is coming next week, I just want to support you in taking extra time for yourself, sleep in, double the self-care, whatever you need to do. And I could show you her response. Like, that's so incredibly thoughtful. Thank you so much. Because I know there have been so many times over the years where something has happened. She reacted, I reacted, she said something, I blew up. And when I look back, it was, part of it is me not paying attention to what's really happening in her world. And I've had to learn to speak energy where as a speaker and a writer and a coach, I've valued words so much. Here we are just sharing words, and putting so much value in the words. And I love a good quote, and I love it. And my wife speaks energy. I have to attune to her body. I have to attune to her energetic state. I need to make sure that when I come to her with sharing my heart, something that's a truth, I had better process that. Because if it comes across with a giant fuck you, even if it's the truth, she's going to react not necessarily to the truth as much as the energetic, I have yet to sit with this and process this. And that's what she's feeling.
I couldn't agree more, man.
Yeah.
Like you can, the words in those moments, if they're not ready to receive, and if you have like a little leverage on that, I mean, that's incredible. But if they're not ready to receive, it could go very, very different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Big time. Yeah. Tell me what else is working for you at home as a dad. Let's talk about your kids. They're 9 and 6?
9 and 7.
9 and 7. Okay, cool. And 2 boys.
Yep.
Yep. I have 2 boys as well. What, they're 15 and 10 right now, Tiger and Ocean. And Dakota and
Finn.
Yeah. So cool, man. I want to meet your kids. I want to meet your
amazing.
kids. And now when I meet other great dads, I'm like, we got to get our kids together.
Totally.
It's so fun to do that. I love when my boys get a chance to hang out with other men and their children, and it's really, really cool. But talk to me about what you're proud of right now, what's going on at home, what's real for you as a father, and feel free to include struggle in that too. But I'd love to hear what's going great.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a story that happened to me probably, it's got to be 3 years ago, something like that, 2.5, 3 years ago. Monumental moment in my life as a father. So we all know I'm also, I run my own business, right? And I've been running my own businesses for 15 years. I like to think of myself, I'm an intense human, but not an unapproachable guy, right? Like I'm an approachable guy. But when it comes to my work and when it comes to things that I'm gunning for, and I try to gun for greatness, everything that I'm going to actually invest my time into, I'm intense. And I didn't understand that the juxtaposition between being an intense business person and a caring, loving husband and father is real, right? Like, and there's a massive difference in those energies. Just it could not be more different, right? Like, and the story is, I was coming home from work. My wife makes dinner. My wife is incredibly structured. So at 6 o'clock, every single night, dinner is done. I'm ready to rock and roll Monday through Friday, and I try to cook on the weekends. So I was getting home at 5:59. Pull my truck into the driveway at 5:59. Walk, boom, right into the house, into dad husband mode. Doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So one day I was walking in
Because there's no transition time for you.
Right.
So
I was walking into the house and I was still working. Out the truck, pull my phone out the thing. I'm like, oh shit! This email. I'm walking down my walkway. I'm still emailing. I walk right into the house. Probably didn't address anybody. Still in the work, and I'm standing at the kitchen counter, and my son Finn is saying, "Dad," and I look at him and I'm like, "Dude, don't you see what's happening here? Like, give me a minute." And I caught myself, and then I looked down at him, and he was like, super sad.
Yeah.
And dude, like the emotion that I even have right now thinking about what that kid's face looked like when I did that was like, who am I to do that? That's what my fucking dad did. Like, I'm going to smudge him out. I'm going to dismiss this 7-year-old kid who only wants me to tell him I love him and only wants me to give him a high five and only wants me to look at him and be there with him when he's asking for my attention, to say, no, I'm busy writing a fucking email that I can take care of tomorrow or after they go to bed. And it just hit me in the face. Dude, never again. All that kid wants is my attention in life. He doesn't care about my email. He doesn't care about money in the bank. He doesn't care about the car that I want. He doesn't care about the house that I want. He doesn't care about any of that shit. He doesn't even care about the vacation, even though he loves the vacation.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about that in that moment. All he's thinking about is, Dad, I want you to look at me and tell me you love me. And not necessarily in those words, but telling him I love him is, hey, buddy, how was your day? That's telling my son I love him. And it crushed me when I noticed that I did that. And then I started thinking about how many times I've done that probably, right? How many times have I...
Too many to count for me.
Yeah, how many times have I looked at my son when he's wanting my attention and was too busy with shit that really doesn't actually matter?
Yeah.
So what I did was I implemented a system, which has been so... And I don't do it every day, but I do it when I'm feeling like it's necessary, probably 2 to 3 times a week. And so I leave my office earlier now, about 10 minutes earlier. And I get to my house. I never want to be late for dinner. Dinner with my family is my number one, like, it's so important to me every night to sit around the table with my family, because I never did it once with my mother, my family. We never sat around the dinner table. So I get to my driveway at about 5:53. I pull up the driveway halfway. I turn the car off. I sit back in my chair. And I do breath work for about 3 to 4 minutes. And I'll do a combination of box breathing, which I'll probably do like 5 to 6 rounds of box breathing, which is 4 breaths in, 4-second breath in, hold at the top for 4 seconds, 4-second breath out, hold at the bottom for 4 seconds. And I'll take that for about 5 rounds. And then I do this double inhale, long exhale, which is a really powerful sort of central nervous system regulating style of breath work. And I'll do that for about 5 rounds. And I do it with my eyes closed. When I open my eyes, I genuinely feel 100% recentered and recalibrated, like back to baseline. And I feel almost like, I don't want to say high, but I'm just really present and grounded, right? It actually stops the energy, the intense work energy. And then I can just drive up to my house and put my truck in the spot and walk into my house. Phone goes immediately into the drawer in the kitchen. I don't look at it. I don't give a shit. I'm not. Phone is done. And I'm with my kids and my wife from 6 o'clock till about 8:30. And at 8:30, I give myself the freedom of checking my phone for 15, 20 minutes and making sure that, everything is cool. But then I put it away again, and my wife and I hang till about 9:30. And that has been such a shift and a change in, I'm sure my family's experienced it, but in me. And again, there are times where I'll go through that exercise and I'll sit at the dinner table and my brain is going. But something that's been really, really successful for me over the last, 2 years is really that little buffer that I give myself of like, boom, Mike, you need to transition out of that energy that you walk into the house with. Sure. If it's work energy, no one's going to want to be around you, man. Like, it's not fun energy for a family. It's good energy for work because people want that kind of like on your toes, like, let's go get them. Your kids don't want you to walk in with that. Your wife certainly doesn't,
It's been true for me, and recognizing that, like you said, the difference between work mode and home mode and, hugely different, or can be, right? Doesn't have to be, but can be. But taking some of the skills that I use in business and not applying them at home was a great miss over the years. An example that relates to what you're talking about is, when I was a professional speaker for 10 years, so 50 paid speeches a year, a decade long. My routine was every time I would get up on stage, I'd read an affirmation that I had in my phone. I would read this affirmation. I would do a centering exercise. Every time I had a coaching client, I had an affirmation that I would read. Every time I would, start a team meeting, I would start with a deep breath. Right before we started this podcast, I was like, let me just center myself for a moment. I would do it in all these interesting places in my life that were my business related tasks, but I felt somehow that I could just walk into my house and like no intentionality, no centering breath, no nothing. And then they caught my energy. And Tatiana and I say that all the time about catching each other's energy. So she'll be grounded. I might be a little frazzled. And if I'm just frazzled and not able to calm myself down, she'll pick up being frazzled and then she'll direct it to the kids, and it's like you can see it kind of hop from one person to the next. So I'll be frazzled, Tatiana will catch it, she'll give it to Tiger gives it to Ocean, and So I recognize how much in my home, and I talked with Cal about this on his podcast, that I'm either the thermostat or the thermometer. And I have to decide which am I doing, setting the tone of my home or reacting in ways to things in my home. And lately, and even after 18 years of marriage and 15 years of being a father and all of this stuff, it's like I can say I've done the best work I've ever done in the last 4 months of my life. That's wild to say.
Awesome.
That's wild to say. And somewhat, there's a little bit of shame that comes with it too. I'm like, I should have been better earlier. I thought that on the drive over here about something. I was like, how did I not get that earlier? Why did that take me so long? And I think of myself as a competent person. I care deeply. Why the fuck did that take me so long? Do you ever wrestle with that? The shame that I should have. I mean, I know you just talked about like, hey, I caught that and I did that. But do you ever wrestle with holding on to things you didn't do in the past as a dad or as a husband that still gets you today? Or are you able to just let it go?
I mean, I've had a lot of experience over my life that have been challenging and challenged.
Yeah.
I don't regret anything outside of one piece, which is
Hey guys, I want to share something brand new designed for high-performing men like you who want to win at home, not just at work. Our team developed this program over the past 8 years by collecting the best ideas, strategies, and habits from hundreds of men. It's all in one place to give you the best results in the shortest amount of time, because if you're a married man with kids and a business, there is no time to waste. This experience creates deep transformation, not just taking notes and talking about change. It's about doing what matters now so you don't miss the moments when your kids need you the most. These opportunities will come and go very quickly. It's also about building a marriage that shows your kids what real love looks like, creating an environment where they and you thrive. Look, marriage is tough. I've personally walked the line of divorce several times, and without the tools I've gained from this community, I might not be married today. And it's not just about being a great dad or a husband. It's about fulfilling your personal mission, thriving as a man, making an impact through your work, gaining time freedom, financial freedom, traveling the world, and giving to the causes you care about. This program is designed to keep you mentally, physically, and spiritually strong. You do not need to do this alone. Our badass community of intentional fathers are going to help you raise the bar. You're going to learn from each other, hold each other accountable, find your blind spots, and achieve success most dads will never see. It's time to dig deep, gain clarity, and create real change starting now. If you're ready to evolve, visit frontrowdads.com today. We've got limited spots available for this brand new program.
when my son Finn was born. He was born on March 7th, 2015. I opened up the first of a chain of restaurants called Seymour's in June of 2015. And then I went on the road to shoot a TV show in August of 2015 for 6 weeks. And so for the first 6 months of Finn's life, my first son, I was not very present. And yes, I would do anything to get that back.
Yeah.
Anything. Because I say the first 6 months, but really it was more like the first 2 years because of how crazy busy I was in the restaurant world, which I'm happy to be out of that business now. But, I think, so something that I've been really working on that I think is really important is one-on-one time with my kids, and I take it for granted that we are such a unit, our family. Like we genuinely love spending time together. Like it's all I want to do. Like I said in the beginning of the podcast, really, it's like I really look forward to just hanging out with my family, my wife and my kids. Like it's my favorite thing. And so we have that, which is so awesome. However, the thing that my father never, ever once did with me was spend alone time with me to bond, to connect, to bond man to man. father to son, male energy to male energy, mentorship, real mentorship. It's a lot harder to mentor when there's when there's other people around, right? That's why like one-on-one coaching is so powerful in comparison to group coaching. You know, group coaching is great. I felt like the one-on-one mentorships, like mentors I've had over the years, have been just way more impactful because I could actually hear what they're saying. And so I feel like with my sons, whether it's one-on-one or me with both of them, that is something that I've really wanted to do. And I just haven't been great at doing it because I take it for granted that we spend so much time together as a family. So I wrestle with that, right? Like they're getting older. You know, they're not going to want to just like hop in the car with dad for too much longer, right? They're going to be like, oh, dad, come on. So I have to step up my game there in a real way, you know, to get that one-on-one time. And it means telling my wife to not come. You know what I mean? Like that's what it means. You know, it means telling her to, you know, go do a girls' day on Saturday. I'm going to take the boys skiing, or I'm going to take the boys bowling. And I've been doing it, thank God. You know, I've been doing it more. But I just know that like I would love to go on adventures with my kids. You know, my kids' favorite thing to watch, and they get TV on the weekends, right? And there's a YouTube show that they love called The Outdoor Boys. Have you heard of these guys?
No.
So The Outdoor Boys, this guy makes every dad look terrible. But
Sounds like I need to have him on the show.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely need this guy on the show.
Yeah.
This dude is the most disarming human being on the planet.
Yeah.
Like you would never know the skill set that this guy has.
Yeah. That's my favorite kind of person right there.
Yeah. But he's like an Alaskan survivalist.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, you put him in Alaska, you put him anywhere, this guy is going to build a shelter. He's going to live on the land forever.
Cool. Yeah,
right?
I love that.
And he's taken his kids with him everywhere. And they make content. So and it's not fancy content. He's just got a GoPro, and that's what he does. And he's built this insane audience. And my kids love it.
Yeah.
And they love watching this guy with his kids. And I'm like, damn, I'm being
yeah.
You know, like he's taking his kids like, you know, SoCo salmon fishing with like, you know, the natives in Alaska all the time.
Yeah.
You know? And I want desperately to have that, right? I want to be able to do that. You know,
when's your next trip?
So the commitment that I've made this year is I am going to take an adventure with both boys, and I'm gonna do every other month. So it won't be an event like a real adventure every month. It'll be every other month. I'll be one-on-one, or if it's necessary, it'll be both of them and me.
Yep.
But every other month, we are going to take an adventure. That could be an overnight fishing trip. That could be a camping trip. That could be, you know, I took Finley down to the city for a night a few months ago, and we stayed at a cool hotel, and then we had an amazing experience watching the Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles play. And it was like we got tickets on the field, and it was just this thing, and he'll never forget that, right? Like that was just a thing that, you know, spending a night in different place alone with your boy, it's just a special thing.
Yeah.
You know, sleeping in a hotel, in bed with him, like cuddling up with my son. Like, how many times am I gonna, like, how long is that gonna be possible? You know,
that's awesome.
So that's kind of the goal. I'm not gonna like be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this every weekend, you know. But we do smaller things on a regular basis. Like they have both kind of enjoyed bowling, so it's an easy thing for me to do on like, you know, 3 to 4 hour trip. We go bowling, and in the spring, in the warmer weather months, we go fishing. But like you know, I'm like, man, like why haven't I been doing this for a longer period of time? You know, because they have such a bond with their mom. I mean, I think inherently, right? Like it's just children and their mom, specifically boys and their mom. You know, I don't know.
Huge.
You know.
Yeah, it's huge. There was a guy I had on the show. His name's John Tyson. He's from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know him? He's a pretty popular pastor out of New York City. And he wrote a book called The Intentional Father. It was all about like his journey, being a father, rite of passage, taking his son back to his homeland. Like, it was really well done. It was a great interview. And one of the things he said that stuck with me was that he had a conversation with his wife. I don't remember the age of his son when this happened, but let's call it like around 10 to 12. There was some time in there, and he pulled her aside and said, hey, I just want you to know, like, 0 to 10 was your time. Like, that was breastfeeding, that was mother, that was nurture, that was care. And he said, I want you to know, like, this is my time. And I'm going to take him and teach him how to hunt, basically, right? And when you look in a primal sense, that does make sense. Dad was out hunting, the child was at home in mom's care being nurtured, which is perfect. And then, there's a time when you say, you have to learn how to hunt. We're going to go together out into the wilderness, and that's dad's time. And I do think that it's not that simple, and it's not like mom's irrelevant anymore, but there is a time when now that shows up for me often when I think about my boys. And I'll say to Tatiana more now in this second half, if we're calling it that, right? If it's 0 to 18 and I'm in the second half, I go, I'm primary caretaker for my boys right now. Right? Like, my influence is the most critical, not to diminish hers at all. And we've talked about it, and she's thrilled about me taking that role. She's thrilled about me taking the boys. I'm like, I got this. I'll handle this. I'm going to have the conversation with him. I'm going to take him out, because this is the time when I need to teach him the skills I've got. And so that's what I committed doing one-to-one trips. And last year I did a week with each boy, just solo. I took Tiger to Hawaii for a week. And it was epic. It was like the most incredible week with him, just one-to-one, hiking, swimming, paddleboarding, visiting other front row dads in Hawaii. Like, it was legit. And then I took Ocean to California. We did Legoland, Joshua Tree. We were doing, this is a true story, dude. I have pictures of this. We're doing breath work under the stars at midnight in Joshua Tree with a guide.
Wow.
And with my 10-year-old. And it was
incredible.
just wild, man, just looking up at this open sky. And I don't know that he really appreciated it, but I'd imagine that it's the type of gift that, like, as he grows up and one day he'll be like, my dad took me to do breath work in Joshua Tree at midnight. Pretty legit dad. Right now, he would have rather been at Legoland.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
Like, this summer, so I live in a pretty rural area, and it's amazing, and the stars are super duper bright.
Yeah.
Like, it's spectacular. And so this summer, I pitched a tent on the property, and I was like, all right, guys, like, let's
It's the best.
Let's sleep. Let's go to bed.
That's an adventure.
Yeah, totally.
That's the coolest adventure.
And the cool thing about it was that, it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And the boys typically go to bed at like 8:15 or whatever. So when the boys are with me, I said, hey guys, when the cat's away, the mouse will play. And so we were hanging out till 10 o'clock at night, stargazing, checking out. I got like an app on my phone that you can kind of point up at the stars, and it shows all the different.
Yes, so cool.
Super stoked. Boys were super stoked on that. One night we had a crazy storm, and they were both terrified. And I was like, I looked at both of them, and I also want to share something that I've been doing with them since they're born, that I think has been very, very powerful. I know it's been very meaningful to me as a dad, but like, courage, I think is such an important thing to teach your children.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to teach, right? Because it's painful. Courage is painful, man. It's scary, it's painful, it's not easy for anyone, right? Like, having courage is what people write, books on others about, right? Like, that is the thing, courage. And so there was a night, it was a crazy storm, and the tent was like, literally, I mean, I was praying to God that it just didn't rip out of the ground because of how windy it was. And both boys were super scared and crying, and they wanted to go back inside. I mean, the house was 200 yards away. And I looked at both boys and I said, hey guys, here's the deal. Look at who you're with. You're with your dad. your dad is not going to let anything happen to you, ever. In this time, in this moment, nothing is going to happen to you that I will not stop from being dangerous. If I felt like it was too dangerous, trust me not letting anything happening to you would mean us going inside.
Yeah.
This is a moment where you guys can stop and understand what courage is. And they got through that. In the morning, they were like, Dad, that was so cool. It was so scary, man. We did it. We did it.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah. But something that I do with my sons that I want to share, and I don't know where I got this from, because I'm telling you, I was not given any kind of blueprint. But values are something, my relationship with my dad, and before we started the podcast, you wanted to sort of get into my dad's stuff. My relationship with my father was very, very, very difficult. Like, could not be more difficult. Very abusive, very violent, emotionally, spiritually, physically. It was bad. My dad was not equipped to be a father. Mm. And so I did not get I don't even want to say good example. I got like the worst example of what it meant to be a dad. My father never came to a game of mine, and I was into sports. My father, allowed me to sleep over at a sports coach's house for 2 years. That was molesting me, just really bad example of a dad. Now, I don't blame my father for the decisions that I made, when I got into alcohol and drugs and lived 11 years of my life in active addiction. I don't blame him for that. I made those decisions. But I will say, there was definitely influence there for me to want to escape. But when my father died, I was 20. He died really young. He took terrible care of himself, like just terrible care of himself. He died at 57. Which is crazy to think, because I'm not that far off of 57, and I'm nowhere near death, And but he did teach me a few things that I believe have helped shape the person I am today, and simple things that really have impacted my life. And one of those things was, I remember when I was probably even younger than Dakota's age, maybe 5 or 6. We were waiting for an elevator, and I was with him, and I remember just walking into the elevator, and my father grabbed me by the back of my neck in front of other people. It was super embarrassing, and I had so much shame around this. But he grabbed me by the back of my neck and pulled me out of the elevator, turned me around, grabbed me by my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and shook me and said, "You never step in front of a lady, ever, ever." Screamed at me. "Ladies always go first. Now get in the elevator." I'll never forget that.
Wow.
I've never stepped in front of a woman ever again.
Wow.
Ever. It is like, it is so ingrained in my head. Deep. Ladies always go first. Now, how I was taught that lesson, I don't condone. Right? I don't think it was necessary to do that now. It was impactful. There's no doubt. But the lesson is invaluable for me. Ladies always go first, for me, is very, very important. I don't care what the mass fucking media says right now. Chivalry is important to me. And respecting women is important to me. Very important to me. And so if that means that I'm going to step aside and let a woman go first, or let my wife order the first drink at the table, or open the door for my wife as she's getting out of the vehicle. Like, is it old school? Sure. Is it something that I believe in wholeheartedly as a sign of love and respect to my mother and to my wife and to women in general? It is. And I feel like that was something that my father gave me that has really helped not only just like make that an important value for me, but just overall, right? Like, I'm not like... respect others, and you don't have to be, it's not all about you, dude, and so that was one. Another one that my father instilled in me was picking up the toilet seat. Now, it's another, and he taught, the way I learned that lesson was not fun, right? Like, he definitely spanked me a number of times if I did not pick up the toilet seat and pissed on the toilet seat.
Right.
But I will tell you this. If I have a guest at my house and they piss on the toilet seat, it tells me exactly who that person is. You know what I mean? So it's a very I believe it's a valuable thing, right? Like, is it all about you?
Yeah.
Like, can you take a moment and just like be thoughtful for a minute? Like, it takes a second to pick up the toilet seat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then by the way, like, even if you pick up the toilet seat, it's worse if you leave it up.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was like, you pick up the toilet seat and you put it back down.
Yeah.
Big one for me. It was a big one.
Yeah.
And then the last one that my father taught me is about eye contact and a firm handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I believe, is it's invaluable just for life across the board, right? Like it's not just about the firm handshake and the eye contact. It's about connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's about attention. And my dad was like very adamant. My dad would like, and again, like I didn't learn this the easy way, but like my dad would intentionally squeeze my hand hard and say, don't you ever forget.
Right.
When you meet somebody, doesn't matter if it's the first time or the 500th time, you look them in the eye and you shake their hand with a firm grip. And so those are the three things. And I said those three things at my father's eulogy when he died. So because of that experience for me, I decided that I wanted to instill values in my sons in a much simpler way, in a much less aggressive way, but I wanted to make sure that it was something that I was able to control for them, right? Like give them, pave this path a little bit for them. And so since they were born, when I put them down, and my wife and I go back and forth every other night, we do something called the 13 things. And the 13 things are 13 values that I started saying to them, and now they have memorized because it's been years. But as we're going to bed, the structure of how we do it is, we go upstairs, and a lot of people struggle with their kids brushing teeth, especially if you have two. Like it's easier if you've got one, but if you have two, like they're just like, it's distracted. So I have them do toothbrushing battles, and we count to 60 seconds, and whoever brushes their teeth better wins. And I do a countdown, and it's like whoever takes their toothbrush out first is the winner. So they battle toothbrush, and then we go into the room and into their bedroom, and I read them a book, chapter, a couple of smaller books, whatever it is, and then they go into their beds, and I lie down on the floor, and I'm like, all right, boys, give me the 13. And the 13 things are: always protect your brother, ladies always go first, squeeze an eyes, remember people's names, lift up the toilet seat when you need to go to the bathroom, put the toilet seat back down when you're done and wash your hands, look to the left before crossing the road, look to the right before crossing the road, kindness always wins, be kind to mommy when daddy's away, always have courage, always tell a parent, teacher, or guardian if you're going to step away from a situation, and I love you. And so those are the 13 things that the boys...
That's so great.
Yeah, and they bang them out back to back. And in my mind, it's like, I never would have thought my father teaching me about picking up the toilet seat and putting it back down would be such a metaphor for everything else in life, right? But looking to the left before crossing to the road and looking to the right before crossing the road is another big metaphor, right? Be aware of your surroundings. Like, be mindful of what's happening around you, like always protect your brother till death. The number one. Your brother is, it could be your blood brother, or it could be your brother in a brotherhood, right? Like, always protect your brother. It's not only you that's walking the planet, And so so we do that, and then I sing to them, "Stand by Me," and then right before they go,
How's your voice?
What?
You have a good voice?
It's decent. It's decent. It's the one song I've been singing for the last 7 years. Very consistent.
Have you ever sung it on a podcast?
I haven't, but I can if you ask me to do it.
Give me a little bit.
All right, I gotta close my eyes, but I'll do
go
it.
ahead. Give me a little bit.
When the night has come, and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light you can see. How was that?
Oh, come on, man.
All right.
Singing on the podcast. I love it. Dude, that's great. That's so cool.
Yeah, but then the last thing that we
Because
do...
Ocean asks me every night to sing him a song, and the best I got is "Baby Got Back." It's
like
actually
that
a
one?
joke between us. Like, he'll go sing me a song because Mom sings. So anyway, that's our running
so
joke.
funny.
Yeah, but keep going. So I have to take a page from your playbook.
The last thing that I do with the kids is I say, you guys can be anything you want to be when you grow up, and your dad's going to support you as long as you do it for yourself and nobody else. And then I say, what's it going to take? And they say, courage. And I'm like, all right, what is courage? And they say, being afraid and doing it anyway, as long as it's for the good. And then I say, all right, boys, it's bedtime, And, it's like I could beat myself up for not spending this one-on-one time alone with my kids, right? Like, because I do. Because I want to do it, and I'm not as good as it's if I say something out loud and I don't do it the way I envision it in my head, I beat myself up for it. And I think that that's probably a good thing in some cases, but it's also it's tough, right? But I do that with my kids every night, and there's just that special thing there, that time. I can't think of ever one time my father putting me to bed. I can't, and I don't think he ever did. Honestly, I don't think he ever did. And so those kids know nothing more, nothing else. Like, their dad put them to bed half of their life. To date, half of their life. And, they love that structure of it for whatever reason. They want it. I can't tell you why, but they really look forward to it. When I'm like, all right, guys, give me the 13 things. They're like, what the? They like it. There's something there. I think that's their love language. And then sometimes I do something.
Interesting. Their dad started a company called Creatures of Habit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am like,
Yeah. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
No.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to stay on the topic of your dad and the impact that had on you for a couple more minutes. And then I do want to get into Creatures of Habit. And I want to talk about your business and whatever else is kind of in the orbit of that, because I think it's really cool. And I think that our audience in particular, entrepreneurs, business owners, fathers, are going to really enjoy that piece. But going back to your dad, have you forgiven him for what he hasn't done? And if so, how did you get there? And if not, what are you still wrestling with? But talk to me about the letting go or the forgiveness element of that, or what still holds on.
I'm grateful for him for doing what he did, because it has propelled me to want to be like world's best dad if I can. I would love that title. That I honestly think that my greatest accomplishment in life is being a participant in the family that my wife and I have built together. Like, there's nothing more like, I'm proud of that more than anything, because we really have this like pretty epic situation in our family. And I don't know, man, what if my dad was like the world's greatest dad? Maybe I would have taken for granted what he did and not have been so, not have made this part of my life such a big priority, For years, I hated my dad. I hated him with every cell in my body. And I can't tell you right now that I love my dad, because I don't know what that feels like. I didn't feel that from my father. And I don't know if like I would be lying if I said, oh yeah, well, I always loved my dad. He's my dad. I don't think just because you're born into a human means that human is going to be the person that you have to love, right? Now, I've definitely made peace for sure, and I did over the last year and a half. I've stepped into breath work pretty intensely, and in a session, in a very, very, very powerful, deep, long, rebirthing breathwork session, I try to set an intention before I go into breathwork. Breathwork it's work, dude.
Yes,
it's work, and it's scary, physically and emotionally for me. I don't know what's going to happen in these sessions, Like, I'm in recovery for a long time, And so plant medicine is not a journey that I'm comfortable taking on my own. And who knows what the future has, but like now I just know that like it's not something for
Makes
me.
sense.
And if I get a calling for it down the road, who knows, man, maybe. But I've found that kind of I've my curiosity and the discovery element of breath work, I think fills that cup for me that potentially some of the plant medicine journeys would do. But I always like to set an intention, and the guy who holds space for me always asks me to set an intention. And so in this one particular session, I just did not set an intention. All I said was I would really love to just continue to peel back the onion because of how much dirt this breath work has moved around for me.
Yeah.
So we got into the session, and out the gate, I kind of dropped in almost immediately. And 5 minutes in, my whole body was buzzing, and there was a lot of energy happening in my body from my head to my toes, you know, and I just felt it like, you know, when you're doing that kind of breath work, and it's like a very visceral kind of, like you feel it in your body, you know, like the energy moving. And it was so intense that it was almost scary. I was like, wait a second, am I having a heart attack? Like, you know, this is scary. Like my hand, you know, like everything seizes up, and I'm used to that.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, this one was intense. And then all of a sudden, I just got hit with a brick of sadness, just deep, deep, guttural, very, very like, just it felt like literally there was somebody inside my soul just digging, you know, and just moving, just digging deep hole. And all of a sudden, the thought came to me. Every decision that I've ever made in my life, good and bad, has been in an effort to get my father to tell me he loved me. You know? And that was like rough because my father's dead. And he's been dead for a long time. And I was in such deep active addiction when he died that like we really didn't, like he was in a coma, and I had one day with him by myself or one evening where I kind of, you know, was high as a kite, but I was like able to articulate some sort of I'm sorry, I love you, I forgive you kind of thing. Anyway, we were going through the work, and I was super emotional, dude. Like I felt like I had like, you know, gallons of tears came, you know, and so we're in this thing, and towards the very end, you know, the breathwork practitioner that I work with is very, very good at pulling on strings, and really, really good at curating music specifically to just continue to just go, you know. And he saw me at this moment where he was just like, he told me afterwards, he was like, I just had to push you further because I just knew that there was going to be something there. And so he put on a song that just, it was like the last nail in the coffin for me, man. It just opened me up. And I'm so happy he did that because I kind of had this moment where, and I know this sounds a little woo-woo, so anybody listening to this has never experienced breath work, whatever, just understand that I'm being totally honest, and I'm not bullshitting or trying to sound like, you know, I'm not making this up. I had an outer body experience, and I kind of left my body. In my head, in my mind, I left my body, and I saw myself from like as if I was lying on the ground, on the floor of my office, and I saw my body kind of looking up at it from underground at an angle this way. And I wasn't in my office in the vision. I was somewhere else, but there was a door in the corner as I was looking up at myself. And my father walked in the door, and my father was young. He was probably in his like 30s, 40s, maybe my age now, something like that. And he looked really healthy. And towards the end of his life, he looked anything but healthy. And he walked in, and he didn't even acknowledge that I was there. I just saw him walk in, and he was like kind of looking around. And then he walked in my direction, and then I immediately went back into my body, and I was there on the floor. And he kind of walked over to me, kneeled down next to me, came very close to my face, his face to my face. He put his hands through my hair, and he whispered, I love you.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
Dude.
And it was just like, I couldn't believe it, dude. I was like, you know, it was like, I still can't believe it, right? But it was this feeling of relief. You know, it was a real relieving feeling that happened for me. And when I came out of it, it took me a while to resurface. But once I did, you know, I sat with Mike and I was like, man, like that vision. And he was like, well, you know, you can say that that's a vision. You can believe that it was a vision or a fabrication of your imagination. Or you can just understand that that could have very well happened for you. And your dad does and did love you. He just didn't know how to tell you. And he was dealing with his own shit. And you were unfortunately a victim of his pain. And man, like, you know, so that experience for me has given me such like freedom, you know, and I don't know, you know, like anybody who's listening here and who has that relationship to their father, I'm not saying that you're going to have the same experience in breath work, but I am going to say some of the most powerful therapy that I've ever experienced in my life, actually not some of, the most powerful therapy that I've had in my life. And I've had an enormous amount of therapy between 12-step programs, mentors, sponsors, therapists, like all of it. Breathwork, hands down, 100%, has done so much more for me. And actually,
Isn't that wild?
Dude, it's just allowed me to see. It's allowed me to see, you know, you can talk all day. You could talk about your problems. You can have somebody analyze them for you. You can have somebody sitting on the other side of the table asking you questions to try to unearth and uncover things that are, you know, like, you know, in your head, in your psyche. But to see things is a very, very different experience. And I'm able to see things through breath work. Like I can, it's almost tangible, you know, it's a different experience.
Can you get there on your own? When you're doing breath work by yourself versus guided with music and somebody else taking you on a journey?
Not as well as I do with someone holding space.
Same.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's I can drop in on my own, but there is something unique about someone who has done this hundreds, maybe thousands of times. Their ability to get cues on when to turn the volume up and turn the volume down,
Yeah.
I really do think make a difference, you know?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same. I am thinking about, we have had a couple of Front Row Dad events. Last 2 years, we have one in December. It's about 125 guys in the room. And the first year, I was like, we've never done this at an event before. But I have a buddy of mine, Stefanos, who's
Somebody was just telling me about him.
he's a men's coach. I was hanging with him last night. Great dude, incredible, like literally one of the top coaches probably in the world, men's coaches in the world. He led breath work for us. It was 2.5 hours deep, you know, holotropic type breath work. And he had the music. He did exactly what you're talking about. And dude, some of these guys showed up to this event. We're like, welcome to the event. They literally walked in the front door. There was yoga mats and blankets on all over this floor.
They're like,
and they're like, what is happening? And within 30 minutes, they're doing breath work with Stefanos. Like, this is their opening night. And I can't even begin to tell you the impact that it had on that room. And for all the reasons that you just said, and I hope that anybody listening, if they haven't had the journey into breath work, that they go and find a place where they can experience this, because I have a lot of guys in our group that are very well read, very well, you know, coached, very well connected in and have listened to dozens of podcasts and audiobooks, and they've thought about a lot of shit. But the minute that you go inward, the minute that you activate your breath. And for all the other reasons that we haven't talked about that may be at play with breath work, that is a place that I've seen more tears, more breakthroughs. That is in some ways beautiful because it's coming from within. It's not being coached out of a person with a direct question, which I agree on the power of one-to-one mentorship. And at the same time, there is something beautiful when it's just a space that you're leaning into. And because of this, what's happening through music and maybe verbal prompts or whatever it is, you're invited to go on a journey, but you're in your own space. And maybe because you don't have to talk it out loud, maybe that's what allows us to get there. Maybe there's more listening to ourselves in that process, not just repeating. I wish I knew why exactly the magic worked, but I've
Well, I
seen it.
also think that, so a guy like, what's his name? He wrote Sermon on the Mount, The Power of Now.
Eckhart Tolle?
Eckhart Tolle.
Or Tolle or Tolle or
Eckhart
whatever
Tolle,
his name is, yeah.
So, he talks about being present, right? And it's like, it's super, everybody talks about live in the moment, be present. Like the truth is that like being totally present is very, very difficult.
Right.
It's like very tough, right? For any long period of time. And, monks spend their whole entire life working on being present and in the moment. However, when you're in breath work, that kind of breath work, where you're required to really breathe at a pace and at a rhythm, it's very, very difficult to be like somewhere else.
That's right.
It's super hard. Like even in meditation, like I've been meditating for a long time. I suck at meditation, man. Like, and I think most people suck at meditation. That's the purpose of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's maybe, it's unlike any other practice that I've done. Meditation is that like growth in meditation, I think happens on like on a 10-year period of time. Like you get like a little bit better every 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
And so it's like being present in meditation. Like, do I feel better after meditating than before I meditate? I do. Am I good at meditation? Am I able to actually be present while I'm in the meditation? It's very hard. And I'm constantly bringing myself back to center. Constantly. I'm like, dude, Mike, in my head, in the meditation, I'm like, dude, can't you just count to fucking 20?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
count to 20, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Like actually follow your breath till 20.
Yeah.
And like at like 11, I'm just like,
You're
But-
describing how I read books?
yeah, me too. I'm reading the
I'm like
sentence.
8 sentences in. I'm like, what just happened?
But back to my dad, it was just my father was a tortured soul. My grandfather was a very, very, very intense military guy. He was in the Navy. He was a naval commander for 40 years, and so everything in his life was about respect and discipline. And if you don't respect and there's not not like discipline in the way he sees it, you're wrong. And my grandfather used to make us salute him as kids, little kids. And it's so funny that so my grandfather had this porcelain bulldog statue in his house. And when we were little kids, he named the dog Winston. It was a yellow porcelain statue. And when we were really little kids, and I'm sure this was because of my mother and father, every night before we would go to bed, when we would go stay at his house, go to Florida to stay at his place, he would make us walk up to the dog and salute the dog and go to bed. But once we got older, he made us salute him.
Yeah.
Because he knew that we weren't going to salute the dog anymore. By the way, I have Winston in my gym, and I
No
salute him
way,
every day.
really?
Totally.
That's cool.
Yeah. But, my father was tortured by my grandfather. My grandfather was very, very difficult. My dad was also type 1 diabetic. And and in those days, my dad was born in the 40s. And so, there was it was like, they didn't know they knew what it was. They diagnosed diabetes, but there was no protocols for it. There was not like today. There's so many different things you can do. So my dad was plagued by this disease that he had, and he was an athlete, but he could never get anywhere because of his diabetes. He couldn't get into the military because of his diabetes. I think that crushed him. So he was just a tortured soul. My grandfather was very, very difficult. And I don't think my father knew what love meant really. Like, I don't think he felt it ever really necessarily. So it was a chain, you know? And I, as a kid, had the same thing that my father and my grandfather had. I'm from that line. I was defiant. And my father hated that. Because I think my father was more scared of his father than I was of my father. So once I got to like double digits, 10, 11, and my father would lay a hand on me, I'd hit him right back. And I'd get in his face. And it became fisticuffs basically between he and I.
Right.
Anytime it would get physical. If it ever, you know, it was definitely not physical every time we fought. And I would let him abuse the shit out of me emotionally. But if he ever got in my face after a certain age, I wasn't backing down anymore. And I think my father hated that. And I know he hated that, you know, because he's fighting with what father's going to feel good about himself fighting with his 11, 12-year-old son, you know? And there was one altercation that kind of changed the whole dynamic between us where I went way sideways. And I was 12 years old. I'd been through the ringer with him. I was already smoking cigarettes. I was already rebellious, very rebellious. And I wanted to show him that enough is enough. I am done. I am not going to deal with this shit anymore. And so we had gotten into a fight, and we lived in this little small apartment. I shared a bedroom with my sister. And I called him into the bedroom, and I had a scissor in my hand. And he walked into the bedroom, and I just went, pew, pew, and I cut my wrist, and I said, "You see how you feel now, motherfucker?" And in my mind, how I played that out was, he's going to come over to me, he's going to hug me, and he's going to cry and tell me he loved me. Wow. And he walked over to me and proceeded to kick the shit out of me. And it was like, that moment was like, this is crazy. I'm gonna show this guy what he's done to me, you know? And so the next day, I was already in the social worker's office pretty much every day at that point. But like the social worker saw that I had these bandages on my wrists, and she asked me what happened, and I told her exactly what happened. And they mandated me to go to Pain Winnie Mental Institution to go get evaluated. But that's when the child services got involved in my family. And it was all downhill from there, basically, you know, and my father and I completely just detached. And I got into drugs. I got into selling drugs. He would, you know, we would fight. The police would come to our apartment. Child services would come. He would tell them to take me away because I'm a drug addict and a drug dealer. And, you know, finally the child services when I was 15, after 3 years of like intensity and them telling my mother that she's got to take me out of there. And she was like, he's going to kill me and all sorts of unsavory things. They said, all right, we're taking the kid to foster care. We're going to take him to foster care. This is too much, you know? And that was like when my life became Catch Me If You Can. I was like, I'm gone. Like, you're going to have to find me, you know, because I'm not going to foster care. Like, no chance. And, you know, I can honestly say that, you know, from 15 to 20, which is that 5-year period of time that my father still was alive, maybe we hung out once, you know.
Wow.
And so like you asked me, you know, have I forgave him? Am I, you know, I'm grateful for him, because that way of raising a son was so scary. And really, again, I can't blame him for the decisions that I've made, but I can say that it was so painful for me. Like, I could never imagine looking at my 2 sons, the same age that my father was very abusive towards me. I can't imagine saying the things my father said. Like, I can't, like, it just doesn't register. Like,
How did you get there? And that's probably a huge answer. You're like, let's take an hour to unpack that. But it's like, how did you get there? Right? Because in many ways, I mean, this always comes up in some form or fashion, right? Is I know this came up with Rich too. Is this idea of, dude, look at you now. You're living in such a way that I almost want to go give all the boys the same life that you had, because whatever happened worked, right? To get to where you are. It's the same thing for me. I was really, really short in high school, and it gave, like, I was terrified, and my high school experience was terrible. I would never want my boys to go through what I went through, but it created who I am today. So I guess my question is, like, we haven't even gotten into your whole crazy story. Like, it's wild. All the details of what happened 15 to 20 and so on. I mean, I want to get there in some degree because it's a wild story, but and maybe I don't want to try to get to the punchline too fast, but it's like, what happened in you? Yeah, this is my question. What happened in you that allowed you to see your boys like you do right now? What switched? Do you remember when that happened? Like, when did you decide? How did it happen, man? I'm trying to think about what question I'm really asking.
So I guess there's obviously a sort of a litany of things that have sort of manifested for me from the age of 23 until I had Finley at 32.
Yeah.
Which is a 9-year period of time, right? I'm in recovery, right? And so realistically, I kind of think of recovery as like a snake sheds his or her skin. The skin that snake had was part of that snake, but the skin has now shed. The snake is the same snake, but the skin is gone. For me, shedding my skin and going from addiction to recovery was very, I believe that I was given a blank canvas to start from scratch.
Yeah.
So I really do. And I think what came out of my transition from addiction to recovery was what it all boiled down to for me was this idea that life on earth for human beings is simple. We want to love and be loved. Period. That is it. It all comes down to love. The good things that we do, the bad things that we do, the way we feel about certain things, the way we don't feel about certain things. At the end of it all, when you peel it all back, it's like, am I able to love and or be loved in this moment, in this situation, right? When you really think about it. And I kind of figured that out. All I was doing when I was using drugs and drinking alcohol to excess, to overdose, to death, because that's what I did. It was like, I just wanted somebody to love me. And if I can't feel that, I'm going to control how I feel. Because if I can't feel what I want, I hate myself. Mm-hmm. And so when I came out of that, I had kind of strangely shed that skin quick. And I felt like I was starting from scratch. And I said, I'm going to do it very differently. I'm just going to do it very differently. And I've met my wife like 8 months after I got sober. And she, she taught me how to love, you know? She taught me like what it means to love. And she talked to me about her childhood and about sitting at the table every night having dinner. And you know, I just I didn't understand, and because I just didn't have that experience, you know, but like those little things are love. Mm-hmm. And so I owe my success as a father, I think, and as a husband to my wife supporting my journey in finding who I was and am. You know, I said to her when I met her, I was deeply into Muay Thai kickboxing. I was like, I replaced my addiction for drugs and alcohol with Muay Thai kickboxing, and I was training 3 to 4 hours a day, and I was insane, and I was very dialed with my nutrition. And I just said to her, hey, you got to understand, I'm a crazy guy. I got a crazy history. I'm going to be a professional Muay Thai fighter. And if you can deal with that, let's do this. And she, for some crazy way, she was like, let's go. But she did, you know, and she still deals with it because I still have that mentality that I'm going to be a professional Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, but like the way I kind of attack certain things, you know. Okay. And so I think really, you know, when it comes to being a dad, I was like, you know, we met so young and we had this relationship in our early 20s. And so we weren't ready to have kids. We weren't talking about kids probably for 5 years. And my wife is a model. So for her, she was in like not even the peak of her career. She was like just, you know, climbing that hill, that mountain. And in her mid-20s, she was like peaking out hard, you know, traveling all over the world. And, you know, like there was like for kids, like not even a shot. She didn't even want kids, you know, like we would have that conversation very, very like lightly. But like she was like, no kids. So crazy that she used to say that because she is world's best mom. Like doesn't get better than that. I look at my sons every single day and I say, guys, you have no idea how lucky you are that woman is your freaking mom, you know. But once we decided that was going to be the conversation, like the path forward, I got hit with just terror. Is this piece of me that I don't see right now going to surface when these kids come out? Am I going to be my dad with these kids? Am I going to be able to handle the difficulties of being a father? Am I going to have patience to put my shit aside to put their well-being before mine? Like, am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to give them the attention? Like, I was scared because, you know, the story goes, you know, the chain continues, right? And like, I didn't know better. I didn't know what a loving father was. So like, how am I going to perform like that? Right? Like typically you're able to before you just like go into something, at least you have a glimpse of like what it is. You know, when it comes to business, like typically you start a business in a field that you've worked in. So you have optics on like the feeling at least. I mean, it's difficult going into business, but for the first time, but like typically you have some exposure. I did not have exposure to what a good relationship with a father was. So, but I did have going for me that like my mom and dad had a really dysfunctional relationship, physical, abusive, the whole thing. And I was able to overcome that. So that was like hey dude, like don't sell yourself short here. Like
right.
You have an amazing relationship with your wife and that wasn't shown to you. And so we did it and the kids came and, you know, it's so cliche to be like, man, like you don't know what love is until you actually like make eye contact with your child for the first time, right? It's fucking true, man. And maybe not for everyone, because my father certainly didn't have it, I guess. But for me, it was. Yeah. For me, it was. And I wanted nothing more than to like figure out a way to be the best dad. And like I said, man, the first 2 years was not easy, right? Like I sacrificed that time for my business, you know, and I learned the hard way. It's something that I'll never shake, that I kind of really missed those first 2 years. But I don't think it was like a switch that flipped that was like, oh, that's it, I'm a good dad. I think it was, I mean, it's kind of funny to say. I remember watching a clip of Oprah with some psychologist talking about parenting. And what she said was, or what the therapist had said was, if you have a very traumatic childhood, there's only one of two things that can happen for the person going forward. You follow suit or you go the exact opposite direction. Yep. And I guess that's true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and for me, it was the exact opposite direction. I believe my children know who's boss. I'm not going to say I'm strict because I'm not. My wife is pretty much the disciplinary in the house. Maybe 5 times in my son's lives have I thrown down the hammer to the point where they were like, "Oh God, that's okay. I get it. I'm sorry. It's you know." I think my wife has been so influential to my children and me, man. Like, really, I don't think that I have to say it, you know, like, she's really like she's just got a way that the structure that she's put in place and the way she mans the household, like, the kids are so well balanced. You know, I just did a post on, I was on my friend Jen Cohen's podcast, and we were talking about parenting. And I said, and I believe this to my core, empty threats to your children could very well be the worst possible thing you can do, right? And what I mean by that is, if your kids are acting out, misbehaving, whether you're at someone else's house, an event, at home, and you say something like, "Hey, if you don't cut that out, there's no X," or, "Hey, if you don't stop doing that, we're out of here." You lay down that warning, that threat, right? Now, if you don't make a threat, but you just say, "Hey, stop that," you can kind of get away with some stuff. But if you say, "Hey, stop that," and if you don't, we're out. If they don't stop it and you don't follow through,
Yeah.
your children
Yep.
are not only going to think you're a phony, but they're going to believe that there are no such thing as consequences.
Yeah.
You know? And what I learned from my wife is, like, you do that, we'll end a great night at a friend's house for dinner because we're out of there, man. We're out. You make the threat, there's no turning back on it. Like, you're out. And things like that, I don't know how she's so good at. But she's taught me that, you know? And yeah, so I think, you know, if I had to say, I guess it goes back to the Oprah thing, right? Like, either you follow the path that you were shown, or you find.
I wonder how much of that's just nature, or how much of that is, like, what makes the decision of somebody either going the same direction or not. I wish I knew why that happened.
That's the
You know,
that's the $1 billion pill.
Yeah.
Right there, you know?
How much is just who you are, and how much is it as other influences that we just don't know. But it's awesome that you have. I mean, the thing that I can celebrate at the end of the day with you is that you're in this really great spot, man. And I want to take a minute to really acknowledge you for what you have overcome, the skin that you were able to shed, the new identity that you were able to embrace, choosing the path that you did, and then also how you're honoring your wife, right? How you're speaking with such reverence. I think that not everybody feels that way about their spouse right now. I know that, just having been in this business for a long time. And it's not the point. The point, though, that I hope lands, and it does for me, is that seeing the greatness in people is so important, right? And even if you're struggling with your spouse or you're struggling with your kids, my thought is to not miss the parts of that human that are also really extraordinary, you know, to honor, like you even are with your father, right? There are things that, even though he won't likely win Dad of the Year award, you're like, I'm grateful for him, and here are some things he taught me. I think that's just such a key part of it. All right, brother. Thank you so much, man. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today, fellas. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you take 1 second right now and you share this with another dad in your life that you respect, that you know is committed to becoming a better man, family man, and businessman. And on that note, I want to honor you for choosing growth. Your family will thank you years from now for all the effort that you're putting in to learn the strategies so you can show up more fully for them today. Take care.